Dr. Sadia Dumas. She's a dedicated educational leader with over 16 years of experience at James Irwin Charter Schools, where she served as principal and fostered partnerships for student success. Her greatest passions are supporting parents, coaching teachers, and collaborating with school leaders to provide students with an excellent education and character building opportunities. She believes that every student was born on purpose and with a purpose and deserves to be given the tools, care, and encouragement to meet and exceed their life goals. Dr. Dumas has a Bachelor of Arts degree in biology and a Master's of Arts degree in human services, emphasizing family and marriage counseling. Most recently, she earned a doctorate of education in educational leadership, and her dissertation focused on teacher retention strategies. Passionate about teaching and learning, Dr. Dumas emphasizes the importance of love, humility, and ongoing personal and professional growth in her journey to impact her community positively. Thank you so much, Dr. Dumas, for being with us tonight virtually at the last minute. So we are going to hand it off to you. Thanks for being here.
Right. Thank you so much. I'm glad to see everyone's faces. I'm glad we're able to meet, to share this time together, and also be safe because, safety is very important. Number one. So I'm just glad to be able to be here with you. I want to be able not to just talk at you, but definitely have a time where we can interact with one another, ask questions, share ideas, because you guys are experts at being parents, just like I am. I'm not only an educator, also I'm a parent. So I've also had the opportunity to sit on both sides of the table. I've had to sit at the table as a parent, as well as sit at the table as a teacher and an administrator. And I know that on both sides of the table, it can be a little bit nerve-wracking. We can get a little nervous when we have to have those meetings and bring up concerns, but it is just so important to have that connection and to have that community between home and school. So we'll just talk a little bit about that tonight. Before we get into that, I'll start sharing my screen. I would like to see if anyone would like to share, just kind of introduce yourself, maybe what grades your students are in, and what you would like to get out of this session.
I'll go first. My name's Erin Valora. I have 6 children, 18, 13, 10, I think I missed one in there, 16, and 2 8-year-olds. And I'm pretty shy. And so building those relationships is difficult for me. And so I'm excited to hear some ways I can challenge myself to grow that relationship.
Okay. Thank you so much. Tell the kids I said hi. Anyone else want to share what you would like to get, or if you have any just opening questions or something you want to make sure we talk about tonight? If I see anything in the, well, I can't see the chat because all I can see is my screen. So I won't be able to check the chat. So if someone could let me know if there's anything in the chat.
Not yet, Dr. Dumas.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and move on. And we're talking about building bridges, that home and school connection. We'll do an overview of what we'll talk about tonight. So first we'll talk about what is the definition of parental engagement? What does that look like? What are the positive impacts? What are some of the barriers? And what are some strategies for positive parental engagement? So first, we're going to talk about what is parent engagement. So sometimes when we think about parent engagement, we think about involvement. We may think about coming to the book fair, volunteering for field day, going on field trips, things like that. And that definitely is parent involvement, and all of those things are very important. But parent engagement is a little bit different. It's when parents and families work with the school to support their students' learning at a deeper level, and they might help with homework and things like that, having meetings with teachers, communicating, and really taking that active role in their students or their child's education. So engagement is a little bit different than involvement. So that's the difference. So when you're an involved parent, you're coming to activities, you're doing those things. When you're engaged, you're asking those questions, you're sending those emails, you're attending those parent-teacher conferences, and helping your students with on a deeper level. So some things that we can do when we're participating in engagement is creating a home environment. So that parent engagement really starts at home. So when you create that environment for your kids, is having a designated spot for them to do their homework. Like, this is where homework happens. This is where we study, and then the environment, it's quiet, the TV's off, the distractions are put away. And so that's a part of parent engagement. Even though you're not at the school at that time, that's still a big part of that engagement, is making sure that the students have kind of that connection where I'm at school, it's quiet at school. That same type of environment is where I would do my homework. And then helping with homework. Sometimes parents think that they're not supposed to help with homework, but it actually is a wonderful thing to help students with their homework, because the homework is that practice outside of class. And so helping with homework is amazing. Now, if you're anything like me, once my kids got to middle school or high school, me helping, I had to study before I could help them. So if they needed help with algebra or calculus and all of that, I had to study it before I helped them, and sometimes I just couldn't. I'll just be honest. I'm like, I don't remember how to do that, sweetie. So sometimes when they get a little bit older, helping with homework can also look like checking their planner, checking whether it's Infinite Campus or Power School, checking to make sure they have their assignments, what their assignments are, making sure that they are completing those assignments so that they can't do that. Oh, no, I don't have any homework. Even as an educator, I got that line from my kids. I don't have any homework. And then I would look at Infinite Campus and yes, they did have homework. Or I would get those messages that said missing assignment. So you definitely can check on that. And that's definitely a help, even if you can't help them with the actual homework, just making sure that they are completing it, that they're doing it, encouraging them to ask questions at school is a part of that. Maintaining good constant communication with the teachers is definitely a way to be engaged. And then going to parent-teacher conferences, and not only going to parent-teacher conferences, but it's okay if a parent initiates that conference. A lot of times we may want to let the teacher initiate it, but if you have concerns, definitely feel free to be the one to initiate a parent-teacher conference, even if it's not conference time, to make sure that you know how your kids are doing, how they're doing academically, what is their behavior in classrooms, and asking those type of questions so that you can have that ongoing partnership with the teacher. And then also classroom observations. Many of us are working, and so it's hard to go in and do a classroom observation. But if you have time to go in and observe in the classroom and see what the dynamics are between your student and the teacher, to see how the homework is given, to see how the lesson is delivered, that can help you to help your child when you're at home. You can say, oh, okay, so that's how the teacher is teaching this. So even doing some classroom observations, can be very helpful to do that. And I know sometimes I've heard it, I've thought it. We think, well, if I go to the classroom, then it's going to look different, or there's going to be kind of a dog and pony show if I go. it's not going to look like what it normally would look like. But I can tell you from the other side of the table, teachers really don't have time to prepare to do a whole lot different than what they already plan to do. And if they do something different, you'll know because the kids will tell you, because they'll be like, what's going on in here? So really feel good about going to do a class observation and know that you are pretty much going to see the way it is every day, because teachers really don't have a lot of time and energy to do something different from what they normally do because a parent is in the classroom. And it's a excellent way to know how things are going in the classroom and to help your child in the classroom. So I definitely would I just lost my word. I definitely would recommend doing classroom observations. Does anyone have any questions so far about anything that I mentioned?
It looks like the only additional comments that were put in the chat were that people responding to your first question were looking for more help. The more
Okay.
help, the better. And Elizabeth said, yeah, just talking about bridging this relationship with her kiddos having 504s
Okay.
and some learning
Having-
struggles. So
having 504s. Okay, yeah. So yeah, that definitely, I can speak a little bit to that. Having students with 504s can sometimes seem a little bit challenging. I don't know if there's a more specific question, but definitely having that partnership, sitting down with the teacher. You know, a lot of times we know that the teacher has the 504, we know that the teacher has that information, but another an extra step to that would be to sit down with the teacher and just really talk about how are the things that are in the student's 504, how are they being implemented in the classroom? And classroom observations can help with that too, because you can see what the teacher is doing to help and how they're embedding the things that are needed in the 504. And so having that conversation is important, because yeah, you'll have the 504 meeting, and that meeting is pretty formal. When you're talking, you have the principal there typically, and then the teacher is there. There's a lot of people around the table, but being able to talk to that teacher one-on-one about what that will look like in the classroom, that gives a better opportunity to really partner and talk about what that will look like for your student. So that's one thing to do, you know, when your student, whether they have a 504 or IEP, is to also meet with the teacher outside of that big meeting where everyone is there. So that's one thing that I would say for if your student has any type of educational plan. So I hope that answered that question. If not, definitely put a more specific question and we can see if we can help with that. So some of the benefits of parental engagement: when parents are engaged, students typically have better grades, they have better behavior, they're motivated more, they will, we see their attendance increase, and then there's a higher instance of them graduating from high school and college. It builds their self-confidence, because when students know that my teacher and my parent are my team, so if my son's name is Harris, then my teacher and my mom are on Team Harris. Like, we're together. We're not against each other. We're not adversarial, but we're a partnership. And they know that they have that team behind them. Then students do a lot better in school, academically, and with their behavior when they know they have a team behind them, supporting them. And then this also prevents students from playing the parent against the teacher, just like sometimes kids will play mom against dad or mom against grandma or whoever happens to be present at that time. So that keeps that from happening, from them playing you against each other, because that can happen. Sometimes kids will say things like, well, my teacher doesn't like me, or my teacher is targeting me, or they're not being fair, or I'm the only one that gets in trouble. So those are the type of things sometimes that our kids will say. And is not to say that they are not telling the truth. They're telling their truth. That's how they interpret it. And sometimes I can just, even as an educator, I would talk to a student and they would say, well, the teacher doesn't like me. And I said, well, how do you know the teacher doesn't like you? And then when they start to tell me why the teacher doesn't like them, it could be because the teacher calls on them a lot, or it could be that they're talking in class and the teacher corrected them, or it could be that they are fidgeting or in and out of the classroom and the teacher is giving them consequences for that. But then the reason that they're doing that is maybe they don't understand. Maybe the work is hard and they shut down and they need a break. There's so many unspoken things that are happening. So to them, because I don't understand what's going on in the classroom, the teacher is being mean to me. But there's a lot of empty spaces there and a lot of empty questions there, because the reason I'm misbehaving in class, or the reason why I'm not meeting the standards of behavior, is because I don't understand what's going on. So I might as well play with my pencil because I don't know what the teacher's talking about. But that's the part that sometimes students are not able to really articulate. And so it comes out as the teacher doesn't like me. But if we have a meeting with the teacher, we meet with the teacher, we ask those questions, we can find out, what is my child struggling with in class? Do you notice that they are different in reading than math? And we can get to the bottom of some of those things and find out why the kid feels that the teacher doesn't like them, or why they feel that they're not being treated fairly. And we can get to some of those answers. And we always want to make sure that we not only hear from our kids, but that we also hear from the teacher. And then we take those things that are common, and then we can partner with the teachers to come up with a solution for whatever that issue is. So, because at the end of the day, what's important is that we make sure that the student feels safe, they feel nurtured, they feel cared about, and that they get the education that they came to school to get. And so just really moving through all of that and making sure that we have a good understanding of both sides of the table. So any questions, anything? I don't want to just, like I said, I don't want to just talk at you guys. Does any of that sound familiar? You have any questions about that?
In the chat, someone did say they're in the same boat. And also someone else said they have a kid that's like that also.
Okay. So yeah, and there's usually something behind it. There's always something behind it. And it's always good if kids are saying things like that to just kind of check in with the teacher and see, what's happening. Because there's a reason that they're saying that. So the next thing I want to talk about are the barriers to building those bridges. So what are some of the reasons that we hesitate to go and talk to the teachers and be engaged in our kids' education? What are some of the things that, like earlier we heard that that shyness is a barrier. What are some of the other reasons why we may not engage?
And you guys can feel free to unmute yourself and jump
Yeah,
in.
please. Oh, yes, of course. Thank you for letting me.
I am an educator, and so I try to tread extremely lightly when I'm speaking with other educators because
Right.
I've taught elementary school. I know, right? Now I'm in junior high and like it's smooth, baby, right? Elementary school stuff. So I have girls who are in third grade, and I just always try to ask questions versus the girl said this, or this happened, or I just try to ask like, hey, Julie mentioned something about this, is there any way that I could get more information on what happened or what needs to happen, etc.
Yes. I mean, that That is real. I'm so glad you said that, because as an educator, it is sometimes hard to have those conversations, because a lot of especially if your kids go to the school where you teach, because you know how things are supposed to go. And you, even if you're a parent and you've been in the school for a long time, you know how it should look. And then if things are not looking as they should, you're like, it's hard, because it's hard to go into a room and just wear your parent hat. People would tell me that all the time. Well, wear your parent hat. Well, it's really difficult to just wear a parent hat when you're also an educator. It's really difficult to do that, because you can't forget what you know. And what I really, really love that you said is ask questions. And that's always really good, to go in with questions rather than accusations, is ask those questions, because then you're having an open mind to what the teacher's side of it is. And so conversations usually always end up a lot more positive when you ask those questions and ask for more information. So I really like that. What are some other barriers or suggestions?
One of the things I struggle with is that my kids are both high school students. So when we did parent teacher conferences, they were in the room with us.
Oh, yeah.
And the teachers were super encouraging and didn't necessarily say any of the things that were areas that needed to be worked on until I reached out again afterwards via email or something like that. So I know that they're trying not to present the student negatively when the student's in the room with me, but that's kind of how parent teacher conferences are done. And so it's been a struggle to kind of reach out to teachers, and I would have to bring up things. I'd say, hey, I noticed that they tend to miss this assignment a lot. What's happening during that part of class? Or I noticed that we don't know when homework is due. It's not always, so what's happening with that? And they're like, well, that, yeah. So the challenge, I think, is sometimes overcoming that part of the conversation. And I don't always succeed at it.
Right. And so I think I like what you're saying, that I know that that's true. So when my kids would have a high school, when both my kids are in college right now, but when my kids were in high school, when I would go to those conferences, I didn't bring them. We had the option of having them there or not. And so I just didn't bring them with me. And I don't know, some schools it may be mandatory, because sometimes it's a part of the students' leadership training or something like that for them to be at the conference. But I think you definitely are doing the right thing, and that is reaching out to the teacher separately to have that conversation, because it is hard to talk about a student's weaknesses in front of them, because it can sometimes impact their confidence. But I think what you're doing is great, to reach out to the teacher and have those conversations, because I don't know if I want to say unfortunately, but it's just the fact that teachers are human. They're going to miss things, just like we miss things as parents. They're going to miss things as teachers. And so we should think it not strange if we have to bring something to a teacher's attention, like, oh, they keep missing this assignment. Because one thing to remember, just from being on the educator side of the table, is that many times teachers have 28 students. And so they have a lot of kids to keep up with. And so I think just definitely being on top of that, and I definitely commend you for being on top of that and saying, hey, I know you want to be positive, but what about this part? So yeah, that's great.
To be fair, I did learn that strategy at Parents Challenge.
Well, that's good. You learned it, you used it. So, and that's great. Any other questions and or suggestions for barriers? I'm going to go ahead to my next slide. Oh, I hear someone.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say it's definitely a barrier when there's personal problems going on in the home. If there's been a death in the family, if people are getting divorced, if people are working like multiple jobs, parents being
Yeah.
tired, if there's an issue of homelessness or displacement, if students are being bounced around because of dealing with abuse issues. I mean, I think that recognizing that sometimes
Mhm.
us as parents, the things that we're going through, although we think that we're protecting our children as best we can, then they are deeply affected by it and it's impacting their work. And sometimes we don't realize the impact of our personal lives as parents until a parent-teacher conference. And so that's why I think that it's important to have check-ins more than just once in the fall and once in the spring, especially if something's going on.
Mhm.
Health issues, if you have a parent that's disabled and having hospitalizations, just a multitude of things. But, the home environment does impact the school environment, I think, more so than we think.
Yeah. And thank you for mentioning that. Sometimes, you know, we don't necessarily want to share all of those. And I'm not saying that you want to share every detail of your life with the school, but sometimes it is good when you're going through things like that to let the teacher know, because that is definitely a part of that engagement, is saying, this is happening. Our kids, even if it's just as simple as, it just depends on where your trust level is with the teacher, and wherever that is, that's okay. But if you just want to let them know, hey, we have some things going on at home, they're having a hard time, you may see these behaviors. Or, I just want to check in with them because we had a death in our family and this was someone that was close to them. Sometimes it can be the death of a pet, and that could definitely impact a student at school. And it's good to make sure that teachers know that, because then they can be watching out for different behaviors. And if there are certain behaviors that they see, they can know exactly what's going on. They can give the student a little bit of a brain break, or a little bit of a break, do more check-ins with them. So it really is good to share some of those things. And sometimes that's a barrier, because sometimes we, as parents, if we have things going on in our lives, we may feel a little bit of guilt that we have things going on. But we also need to remember that teachers are human, and they probably have things going on, and it's probably not the first time they heard it. And it can only serve to help them come alongside the student even better if they know that things are going on. So it definitely can be a barrier when you have things going on, because you don't want to have those conversations. But sometimes just giving them a little snippet of what's going on can be helpful.
Can
And
I
they
ask
know.
a follow-up?
Oh, yes, of course.
So, do you have any ways of like how parents can be empowered? Because I think when things are going on home, there's a lot of shame, no matter how light it may seem or deeply personal. That's all very subjective. But do you have any steps, or some schools are really strict about their hierarchy and you have to go to the aide first, then the teacher, then the assistant principal, then the principal, then the head of schools. Like, is there any empowering ways so that I know that shame is subjective too, but of ways to, you know what I'm saying, address deeply personal in home situations with the school?
Yeah, I think that really letting the teacher, let's say you have that, because we kind of, when I was at the school where I taught, we kind of had a hierarchy, and we really did ask our parents to start with the teacher, because the teacher has the boots on the ground. They know the most about the situation. And sometimes parents may feel just more comfortable, because I did have parents that felt more comfortable talking to the teacher first. And then I had parents that felt more comfortable talking to me first, and then having me relay that to the teacher. And I think just having the strength to say that, to just say, I know that this is something I should share with the teacher, but I really would feel more comfortable talking with you first, so that you can help me navigate and know how much I should say to the teacher or how to say it. And I think just having that empowerment to say, you know, um, this is really a sensitive topic, but I wanted to share with you something that's going on in our home so that we can have a partnership. And I think another thing that can help empower parents is when you establish that relationship and that trust early in the school year, then it makes it easier to have that conversation when something is happening because you already have a foundation for that. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
And Dr. Dumas, I think that was great advice that can actually apply to one of the questions that was posted on here about what do you do if it backfires, if the administration at schools or teachers don't have mercy, don't seem to be understanding the situation well. So I love what you said about establishing that relationship early on, lots of conversation, but what else could you add to that?
You see, if they don't understand the situation.
Let's see, I'll just read it for you. It says, what do you
thank
do when sharing those things backfire? For example, admin at schools or teachers have no mercy.
So if you share something with, I'm trying to just put myself in that situation. You share something with the teacher or the administration and it backfires on you and they don't have any mercy for the student. Honestly, as a parent, I think I would probably, and I know this sounds odd for me to say as an educator, but I think I would go higher. I think I would talk to someone else about that. But I think that it also could, I think making sure that when you're having that conversation with them, I think when you have the conversation with them, make sure that before you leave that meeting, that you have a plan. And I think I would request of the teacher and or administrator, when you have the meeting, say, so what is our plan? How can we partner? How can we do this together? So this is what they're struggling with. These are the behaviors that you may see. Can we work together to come up with a plan for them? And I think I would do that more than I would. I mean, you could go higher, but I don't know what the outcome really would be for that. But I think really making sure that when you leave the meeting that you have a plan. And I would say make sure that you have some strategies and they have some strategies. Does that answer the question?
Let's see. I haven't seen a follow-up on the chat yet, but that
Okay.
sounds great. But yeah, if you
Yeah,
have any
yeah, I think
follow-up.
making sure,
Go ahead.
yeah, you have strategies with them before you leave the meeting. And then hopefully you won't need to go higher for that. Okay. So some other barriers that we may have is our previous experiences. Sometimes we may have had bad experiences when we were going to school. And so we carry those into the meetings. Maybe we were in the principal's office a lot, or maybe we had a bad experience with a teacher that wasn't as encouraging as they needed to be. And then we can sometimes reflect that on the students. Not on the students. We can reflect that onto the teacher that we're talking to. So we have to be careful about what our experiences are. And sometimes that can make us nervous to go. Because I've had people to come in my office and say, oh my goodness, I was in the principal's office so much when I was a student. I'm real nervous to walk in your office. And so just thinking about that and pushing past that can sometimes be a barrier. And sometimes you may have a rocky start at the beginning of the school year. Sometimes, day 2, something happens and you may have to have an uncomfortable conversation with the teacher within the first week of school. So sometimes that can be a barrier because we had a tough conversation. Sometimes as parents, we can feel inadequate. We can feel like we don't really know as much as the teacher. So we might feel nervous about talking to the teacher because we feel like we don't know enough about what they're trying to teach our kids. But I think that one thing that you have to know is that as a parent, you're an expert on your child. you may not know what the teacher is teaching, or you may not know what is going on in the classroom and all of those things, or you may not be able to help your child as much as you want to, but you're an expert on your child, on their personality, on what they're good at, what they need help with. So you know that you come with that. And I think just realizing what you come with and what you bring to the table can help us not be nervous as parents when we talk to the teachers, because you are the expert on your child. And sometimes guilt can be a barrier if we are working and we're not able to help with homework and things like that. And I think don't let that be a barrier. I mean, that can just be your truth, and you can just say, hey, I want to set up a phone call with you. I do work nights. I'm not able to help with homework, but I know Billy is struggling with this. In what ways can I help? And just not feeling guilty about the things that you're not able to do as a parent, and just ask, okay, what are the things that I can do? This is my situation. These are my work hours. How can I help? What can I do to help my child? And ask for that partnership in that. And so those are some of the barriers that we might have. Does anyone have any others, or do we have any other questions in the chat? Okay. Okay, so we talked about establishing a partnership with the teacher. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to establish a partnership with the teacher if you hadn't already. So we are almost in February. So we may be thinking, wow, well, it's too late to do that now, but it's never too late to establish that partnership or reestablish it if you've had a strained relationship with the teacher. So an in-person introduction is a good way. So if you haven't had an opportunity to go up to introduce yourself to the teacher, that would be a good way to do that, is to have that in-person introduction. If you are working and you're not the person that drops off or picks up your child, you can do an email introduction and just email them. And I have a sample on the next, I believe it's on the next page, of what that could look like. And make sure you know your child's teacher. Make sure you at least know their name. And so that when you see them, you can call their name and know who they are. And I say that because you would be surprised. I have talked to parents and I'll ask them, well, what is your child's teacher's name? And they don't know what their teacher's name is. So just, and usually it's because they're busy. It's not because they don't care. It's because they're busy. It's because they may not be the one to drop off or pick up their kids, and they may not be the one that does their homework with them. So, but just make sure you do know that teacher's name, and then keep up open communication, whether that's in person, email, notes, phone calls. That can look many different ways depending on what our jobs and lifestyles and things are. And then also, I would say giving words of appreciation to the teacher. So every once in a while, write a note just telling the teacher thank you. That can help establish a positive environment with the teacher, because this is a thing, it's kind of like like a banking account. It's when you go to the bank, you want to make some deposits, and if you have to make a withdrawal, you have to have something in the bank. And so giving the teacher those words of appreciation helps you to have something positive in the bank, so that when you do have to have that uncomfortable conversation, you've already made some positive deposits. So when you have to have a hard conversation, it's easier to have that because you've already established a positive, some positive interactions with the teacher. And I see we have a hand raised.
Yeah, my question is, I think at times like Teacher Appreciation Week, and when you don't have the money to do all the extravagant gifts, that there are schools where there's like super monetarily blessed people, and there are less monetarily blessed people, and everybody can't do all the fancy Starbucks mugs and stuff, but how especially, so this I guess is my question for you as a person who is been at a teacher and administrator. What are ways so that you feel appreciated that aren't if you're less monetarily blessed, that will resonate, and so that you can establish that rapport with also not going broke, but also not trying to like buy a teacher off. Like I'm sure, are all aware of experience that sometimes in our life.
So what I can tell you is the Starbucks mugs, the gift cards, all of those things are used, the flowers, all of those things are used and they go away. What I have still is notes that parents wrote to me. I even had a parent to write a note to me on a piece of loose leaf paper that was ripped off. It was ripped at the top. And they wrote on it, "Dear Mrs. Dumas, thank you so much for being such a valuable part of my child's life. You make them feel special every day." That's what I keep. That's what lasts. All those other things, I might forget. If I look at a mug, I might forget who bought me that mug. But when someone writes me a handwritten note, I will remember that. I have emails that I printed out where parents sent me an email and gave me some words of encouragement or appreciation, and that's what I hold on to. So those are the things that are going to be saved and remembered. So I think a handwritten note, you can't go wrong with that. That's something that the teacher can keep and look at forever.
Another parent said the same thing, with notes are more valuable than gifts. And another person chimed in saying helping out with class parties, maybe bringing
Yes.
just a simple food, but participating.
Yes, definitely. I'm glad you said that's another thing coming in. I cannot tell you how a teacher will light up when someone comes in to help with copies or sharpening pencils. And sometimes when you can't be physically in the school, sometimes you can ask the teacher, "Hey, if you have a pencil sharpener at home, hey, can you send me a bag of pencils? I can sharpen some pencils. Or do you have anything that you need me to cut out?" Because sometimes parents can't come in the school. You just can't, because you have to work. You have things that you need to do. But sometimes there's things that you can do outside of the school that they can send home for you to do. And so helping out in the classroom is definitely another way to do that. Okay. Right.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
So one of my things that I found difficult is my kids are in high school and they specifically ask us not like for the kids to communicate with the teachers as things come up, which I think is a great thing for them to be able to do. But sometimes I feel like I need to be part of the conversation, and I always feel sort of like maybe I'm coming off as micromanaging or something, like, or I'm not. So I just always feel a little weird because they make a big deal about that at the beginning of the year. Like, we don't want to be having your parents email for you. You need to be doing it.
Right. And I think because I know more so my son, who was younger, did a little more communication with his teachers in high school. But I think as a parent, you can't really worry about what they're thinking about that. And I think that when it's something that you want to talk to them about, you just do it.
Yeah.
Either
Okay.
one. And you may want to let the student start with it, and then maybe you follow up with the conversation about it.
Mhm.
If it's something that you feel like as a parent, this is something I need to handle, I think you just do that. And maybe you can do a both and let the student send an email and then you also send one. Say, I want to follow up, and I just use the name Billy. I just want to follow up with Billy's email about whatever this is. And I think you just have to do it. Because
Okay.
at the end of the day, you're the parent and you have to make sure that you handle it. And I think it's okay to let the kid handle it, but then maybe you do it as well.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So are there any other questions? Okay. So I do have a sample introduction. And so this is one for, let's say you haven't established a relationship with the teacher yet. And so you want to start doing that. So good morning, I'm Mrs. Dumas. I'm Thomas's mom. I wanted to let you know that I'm so glad that you're his teacher this year. I know we haven't had a chance to talk much this year, but I would love to finish the year strong, showing Thomas that we're partners and want what's best for him. I look forward to communicating more with you. Is there anything that I need to know to support you in the classroom? So that's a sample that you could send to a teacher if, maybe you haven't established that relationship yet, but you want to. So this is a good way to do that. Would anyone add anything else to this? Okay, I don't see anything.
Maybe
So next,
something positive about your kid, because I know in
yeah,
elementary school, they'll ask
mhm,
you like stuff, what's so-and-so's favorite food or what's good about your child. But I think
mhm,
up through high school, like, my child is brilliant. Of course, we all feel that way as parents, but even, you know what I'm saying? I don't know,
yeah,
like, um, because, little Billy loves English so much or thrives in this class, I'm sure he'll do well. You know what I'm saying? Like
yeah.
something positive about your child too, because I think, um, that's going to resonate in the teacher's mind and be like, oh yeah, this person really is going to do well in this class because this is his favorite subject. And you know what I mean?
Oh
Like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
really look towards that student as like a leader in that particular subject.
Yeah, I like that. I had one of my the students in I used to teach second grade. And so one of my students, he was definitely having a few um behavior issues. It was hard for me to encourage him. And so I would talk to him about, what can we do? What do you want to work for? And so he just flat told me, I don't want anything you have in this classroom. And so I was like, okay. So I did talk to his mom, and because she was able to tell me the things that he liked and what he didn't want, and he was honest, he didn't want anything from me, and he didn't. And he meant every word of that. And so I talked to his mom, and what he wanted was most of all, and they were having some issues at home. So what he wanted most of all was time with his mom. So his mom provided some little tickets. She laminated them and everything. And they said ice cream with mom, watch a movie with mom. And so that's what he worked for. He wanted to work for extra time with his mom, even if it was just a few minutes, just eating some McDonald's French fries on the way home in the car. Those are the type of things. And so those are the type of things that can come out through those things, and just letting the teacher know, hey, this is what my student likes. This is what they'll work for. This is what they're good at. This is what they're struggling with. So I think, yes, definitely sharing something about your child with the teacher is very powerful.
And I don't know if any parents have kids with food allergies, especially younger. Every year I have to like set a meeting with a teacher, but instead of being like what do you call those, the nasty moms or something, I just like send a picture of my kid and like about me and like what they like or what they want to do when they grow up. So it's not just like the disease rather than like they're a person. And then I bring like a little bag of candy treats in case they don't have time to connect with me randomly for any class parties. And then that, it lists all their allergies and stuff so they can use that, as a just in case. But yeah, and then we meet and talk about all the protocols. It's not a 504, but it just kind of helps like clear the air, and then it's not like something nasty, it's more just like kind, I guess.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I think that's wonderful. I really love the part that you said where you put their interests and their hobbies and what they want to be when they grow up. So it's not just about what their allergies are, but this is my whole child. I really love that. That's great. Anyone else? Okay, so these are some sample appreciation notes that you could send, you know, talking about Thomas. I won't read the whole thing, but talking about Thomas making a 90% on his test and just, you know, acknowledging that the teacher had a hand in that. And that's letting the teacher know that you're involved. That's letting the teacher know you're checking the folder, you see the test, and that you appreciate what they have taught your child. So. And then the second one is maybe Thomas was sad. Maybe one of his friends on the playground wasn't so nice to him. And then the teacher helped to make him feel better about that and help them have a good relationship. So just little things like that, that if your kids come home and say, oh, you know, I was sad today and the teacher helped me. And just really acknowledging that the teacher did that, that can help build that positive relationship with the teacher. Okay, anything on that? Go to the next one. Okay. All right, so parent-teacher meeting. So I wanted to just ask the group, how many of you have had a parent-teacher meeting and how did it go? Or if you had a parent-teacher meeting, how did it go? What did it look like? What went well? What do you wish had gone better?
Well, my son, the teacher that started out the year, she then was let go. I don't know all the circumstances, but then the first day of the new teacher that came, she saw that we had the 504 plan, and she took the first step, and it really meant a lot to me as a parent. She's like, hey, I know you're Lee's mom. Can we go talk in private just really quick? And she said that she really wanted to partner with me, and I really appreciated that, because my son has autism, and so it really meant a lot that this teacher took my concerns seriously. And so I know that I can go up to her when other issues arise. And so we kind of have that good back and forth banter, but I really like what you're saying about the encouragement, because I'm not always so good about retelling the teacher how good she's doing, but she does make it really easy that if there's an issue, and she'll come to me, or she's called me a few times throughout the school year, hey, we had this issue. Can you help with it? And so I appreciate that she's willing to communicate with me, and I got to deal with a 4-year-old, so I will be back.
Yeah, yeah, and that's great to definitely have that partnership. Anyone else had a parent-teacher meeting? What went well? What do you wish had gone better?
I think what's frustrating for everybody, I loved what you said about, sorry, I'm trying to recall the exact wording, but I loved what you said about knowing that the parents and the teachers, you know, are partners. My son is now 20, and in retrospect, I see lots I would do differently because he was my first one, right? But the one thing I knew is that he was quite bright, and he started reading, you know, around 3 or 4 years old, and then got into some pretty advanced texts by kindergarten, right? I mean, he was reading chapter books, I guess, in kindergarten. And his teacher was like, well, he's wiggling on the carpet while we're teaching apple. And I said, right, because we did that at like 2.5, right? And so she just immediately, oh, you just think you're so great. Oh yeah, every parent thinks their kid is gifted. Every parent thinks their kid is so smart. You think your kid is so special. And I wasn't saying any of that. I just said, like, I was very early in my I was becoming a licensed teacher, right, at that point. So she says, you know, you're only getting your associate's degree right now. I've been teaching for 25 years. Like, it just became very combative very quickly. And I just was saying, like, give him a book on the carpet, right? Like, give him a chapter
Yes.
book at the back of the carpet. Carry on. You know, he understands he has to come and sit at carpet. Give him a book. Well, the other kids are going to feel bad. I said, I don't think they'll notice, but like, you know, I mean, it just, anyway. So I just, for some, okay. So I think a lot of educators and a lot of administrators feel pressure, and they can either take that and channel it from a place of fear, right? Or they can own that fear and turn it into something productive. And I think when you see administrators and teachers who can acknowledge, yeah, I'm out of my element in this issue, so I'm going to reach out to SPED. I'm going to reach out to my administrators. I'm going to reach out to the district and see if there's a coach that can come in the classroom and see the problems I'm having with this kid and if they have any suggestions, right? So I think that de-escalation of from it being such a combative, confrontational, to a, you know, listen, I want to help you have a good experience with my kid the same way I want to help my kid have a good experience with you. How do we achieve that? And just remaining
Right.
solutions based.
Mhm.
Now when I'm having conversations about my youngest triplet is autistic, and so when I'm having conversations with her teachers, I know now how to ask questions or how to say things in a way that makes it very clear to the teachers I'm not at all saying that you're failing my child, that you're doing anything wrong. I'm trying to help partner with how we can help her be successful.
Right. And I think that's really important. And one thing that I learned both as a parent as an educator is the power of the question. So I really love that you said that in asking questions. And because one thing that we do have to realize is that sometimes teachers do have that fear. Sometimes teachers feel inadequate and they're also nervous when they come to the meeting. And depending on our life experiences, sometimes we already feel that someone is second guessing whether we can do something or not. And so just keeping that in mind, and I think definitely, you know, when you go to those parent meetings, we're going to talk about on the next slide, you know, coming with your questions and kind of prepping how you want to say things before you go into the meeting so that it is non-threatening. And let's be for real, when we feel like our kids are not being treated the way that they need to be and they're not getting what they need, we get our ire up. I mean, I'm an educator, but I've also been a parent and I've had my ire up about my kids. You know, don't play with my kids. I don't play about my kids. Let's just be, you know, be real. But then when we go into that meeting, we want to make sure that we are cool, calm, and collected, and we have all of our things, you know, in our pockets, and that we can go in and be calm and ask those questions, because sometimes we are really bothered about what either we know is going on in the classroom or we um suspect is going on in the classroom. So we really have to have an open mind, be ready to listen, and be ready to have questions rather than accusations. Even if you know for sure something is happening, it's still better to ask it in a question, because it puts the teacher at ease, and it gives them the opportunity to really answer it, and they feel like they're answering a question, not that they're defending their actions. And so it just makes the conversation go a lot smoother that way. So I do have a slide here. Please let me know if there's questions. Feel free to unmute yourself. I won't get upset if you interrupt, because I can tend to keep going. So parent-teacher meeting, if you have any questions, have any concerns about your child's progress, whether that's their behavior or academics or their relationships, you know, set up a meeting with the teacher so that you can be familiar with your child's progress in any of those areas. And like we talked about before, bring questions to ask the teacher. You know, are they on grade level with reading? Are they on grade level with math? Are they on grade level with language? What are the areas that they are struggling? What are they doing well? Because you want to be able to congratulate your kids on the things that they're doing well as help them with the things that they are struggling with. You know, ask them, what is their behavior in class? Do you notice that they pay less attention in any particular subject? How are they on the playground? What are their relationships with other students on the playground? So those are good things, because even things that happen in the playground, on the playground, impact kids when they come in the classroom. They don't just shut recess off when they come back in the classroom. And so just knowing what are all of those pieces that are impacting my child's education. And then definitely listen to understand. A lot of times, I know for me, I'll go through scenarios. I've already planned. When she says this, I'm going to say that. And if she says that, I'm going to say this. And if she says this, I'm going to say that. And so sometimes it's good to reserve that and just really be ready to go in just to listen, so that you, and don't decide how you're going to respond until you're in the moment, other than you're going to be calm. Because sometimes, you know, we don't want to be calm. Let's be real. I've been in a meeting and not been calm, even though I'm an educator and I know what that feels like. So I've had my moments where I've, you know, wasn't always as kind as I needed to be. So I understand that from a parent's perspective as well. And then minding our nonverbal communication. So, you know, not rolling our eyes when the teacher is trying to explain something to us, because, you know, that interrupts the flow of the conversation. So really keeping our nonverbals in check. My face says a lot more than my words do, a lot. So I really have to keep my nonverbals in check. And then trusting the teacher. And sometimes that's hard. It's hard to trust someone when you're not in the classroom all the time. But I think it's very important to trust what the teacher says. You know, I've been in education, like I said, for 16 years, and 9 times out of 10, the teachers want the same thing you do. They may have a different way to do it. They may have a different method, but at the end of the day, teachers want your kids to do well, and to just trust that, and trust that you can be a partner with them. And then I would say use we language, and just realize that, you know, the teacher has a part and the parent has a part, and use that we language so that it is a partnership, and then be a part of the solution. So are there any questions or comments on this part?
I have a quick question. My daughter has been telling me about some issues on the school bus with kids screaming curse words, and she only used the first letter of each word, but because I went to public school, I know what each one of those words means. And so then she went on to say in the playground it's happening as well. What do you do when you have a certain home culture where you don't hear, you know, expletives all the time, and then the kid has to go to school? The first thing they get on the school bus, they hear F-bombs. What do you do when the home culture and the school culture is like completely opposite? How do you help the teachers and the administration bridge that gap?
I think one thing is letting the teachers and the administration know that it's happening, so that they can address those things that are happening. And this is one thing that we do have to realize as parents. It's something that as parents we don't like, but whenever we send our kids to school, there will be different cultures in every home. And so it's just like a melting pot. You know, you're going to have one home where they wouldn't dare utter profanity, and then you're going to have another home where that's their common language. It's just in their communication. Because I've had parents and I've sat down with parents, and through the whole conversation, they're using profanity, but that's how they talk. And I've had to learn to know that, okay, they're not saying that to me. That's just how they talk. But anyway, I think I'm getting off topic. But I think we let them know that, but I think we really do have to realize that when our kids are going to school with other kids, they have different values and they have different things that different homes have different things that they feel that are appropriate. And I think what we really want to focus on is how we teach our children to navigate that and how they respond and how their behavior should be different if we have a different opinion about how that should happen. So I want to tell you a story about, it's not a story, it's for real. So my daughter came home in middle school, and she told me that she got in trouble for using the B word. She called someone the B word. And I was like, how could you do that? We don't talk like that. She said, that's the problem. She said, you guys don't talk like that. You don't let us watch TV with those words in it. And she said, I heard the word. I heard someone call someone else that because they were being mean. So I called someone that because they were being mean, but I didn't know it was a cuss word because you didn't teach me that that was a cuss word. And I was like, oh my goodness. And so it was kind of the opposite, that she said, so can you tell me, she had me to tell her what all of the cuss words were and what they meant so that she wouldn't use them. So it can be, it also can backfire when our kids don't know these things. So I think that as those things happen, we have to use those as learning opportunities for our kids and say, okay, well, you know, Billy might be able to use that language. We're not able to use that language in our home. We're choosing not to use that language. This is what this word means, and this is why you shouldn't use it. Because teachers can only do so much. Once a word flies out of a student's mouth, the teacher can address it, but she can't take it back. She or he cannot take it back, and they can't fix it. But they can, you know, address it. And I think is more, we want to focus more on how do we talk to our child about that, about what they heard. Does that make sense? I mean, it's not a popular answer, I know, but
Yeah, it's so hard because she knows that she doesn't want to do it, but she started saying things like, "Can I just want to stay home?" and "Can you homeschool me?" And I'm like, "What?" You know, I learned how to cuss in public school, like a lot of kids learn how to cuss. So I know this thing has been happening and will continue to happen, but I'm at a loss to kind of equip her to like brush it off and just move on. It just seems to be getting under her skin. I don't know how to, bridge that gap where she can just be, comfortable.
yeah, and I think it really is difficult because when things are so different than they are at home, it can be difficult for kids. But I think we really have to equip them because when they go in the world, they are going to, for the rest of their lives, interact with people that are different and that have different values and have different opinions about things. So I think we really have to maybe talk to them about, so I know this bothers you. What can you do when this bothers you? When this happens, what can you do? Can you, let's say they're on the bus, can you know, pull a book from your backpack and start to read it? And I think just giving them those tools to deal with when these things happen, because they will happen.
Dr. Dumas, we have a few comments coming in.
Okay.
A few people are resonating with this idea of trying to rein their emotions in. I think they've really appreciated your advice and your reminders. Heard some comments about wearing emotions on their sleeves and Mama Bear coming out. So I think excellent reminders about how we want to prep ourselves before coming into these meetings. Holly mentions from the teacher perspective when she hears parents label their kiddos, oh, they're just bad at this, they're no good, so then maybe a parent even having more of that kind of open mindset coming in about what can my student learn, as opposed to, this is their weakness, they're not gonna accomplish that. So I love that Holly brings that point up. And then a few comments about hearing the language or the different cultures, giving kiddos options for other words they can use. Let's see. And just because you hear it doesn't mean that's what we do at home. So again, a lot of the equipping that you were talking about, having lots of dialogue and conversation at home. Let's see, or have them pray for these people if you guys do that at home. So excellent suggestions. I think all of these comments are really resonating with parents. But a lot of good prepping ourselves, I think, is what I'm hearing in the chat, and lots of dialogue. So let's see, I think no specific questions then, just lots of
Okay.
comments. So,
Yeah, I know one thing, I've had to have a couple uncomfortable conversations with teachers. And one thing that I would do before I would go in is I would write down what I wanted to say and write down my questions and make sure that I said those. And sometimes I would even practice it to make sure, not that I was lacking in emotion, but that if I was upset, that I could make sure I could say it without all of that coming out. So that's one thing that helped me when I had to have some conversations, was to just really write it down, what I wanted to say. Okay, so next we're going to go over some common parent concerns and solutions, and just kind of talk through what that would look like and what a conversation with the teacher could look like in these situations. So the first one is a lack of communication. So one thing that we would often hear is that the teacher isn't communicating. Like they're not giving, I'm not getting information about my child. I'm not getting their grades, or I'm not getting information about how what their behavior is at school. So just that lack of communication could be. So let's just kind of talk about what could we do if you felt like you weren't getting communication from the teacher? Or if anyone has been in that situation, how did you handle it? If it went well, how did you handle it and see a change?
I feel like I'm talking a lot tonight. Is it okay if I answer?
It's okay if you're talking a lot.
Okay. Okay. Just this, so we changed from one district to a different school district. It was an amazing transformation. At the beginning of this year, my daughter's teacher said something to her that she thought would be motivational. My daughter did not receive it that way. So as teachers, we make mistakes sometimes, right? And so my daughter was crying and upset. My teacher said something along the lines of, like, I'm going to take a picture of how upset you are and send it to your mom, right? My daughter took that very punitively, and I heard it very punitively. So again, because she's child number 5, not number 1, I took some deep breaths, after my daughter told me, and I said, okay, I said, I understand why that hurt your feelings, is what I said to my daughter. Let me think about this, right? And then I just asked her teacher if we could meet. And hear me when I tell you, I stole that from my friend Aisha, who's on here. Hear me when I tell you, I was shocked. She said, you know what? I did say that. I immediately felt so comfortable with her, because she said, I didn't realize Julie would, she said, I hear back now how it sounds, right? And I didn't realize that hurt her feelings. And I said, you know, I'm not the perfect parent, and I live with the girl. So trust me, I've said some things to her that are more punitive sounding, but we generally try to remain strengths based with her and be positive and etc. But just the sheer fact, my entire experience with educators prior to that, you know, I think my oldest son had ADHD, ADD that we never got diagnosed early enough. He might also have symptoms of autism. You know, each of my kids kind of had some neurodivergent aspects, right, of their learning. And I never really knew great ways to advocate, or I did try to advocate and I just got shut down or attacked or whatever. So this was my first experience that an educator said, yeah, you know, I did that and now I hear it. And so then I said, these are some phrases when she's frustrating me at home that I use, or when I need product out of her, or I need her to do something not in the 35 minutes that she wants to take it because she's time blind, right? And so it just, and I thanked her, and I had told the assistant principal before going into the meeting, I'm a little nervous, and you know, this is what was said. However, I really truly would like to try to fix it with her teacher first. And then the AP said, please come tell me afterwards how it went. And I was able just to go back and say, that was amazing. It was amazing. She heard my concerns as a mom. She didn't shut me down, and she's willing to take the steps to figure out, you know, what my daughter needs. And I'm willing to hold my daughter accountable for what her teacher needs her to do at school, etc. So it was really cool to finally see, I guess, like what it should be, you know, versus what I had experienced in all of my other children's schooling. It was just being shut down. And it was a very punitive, you know, experience.
Yeah, and I think that that's great, and just your show of partnership. And I think realizing that yes, the teacher is not perfect and teachers are going to make mistakes. And I think as parents, when we know that, okay, this teacher did say something that was not encouraging to my daughter, but this teacher is also human. So let's talk about it and let me share with her or him what are some different ways to address situations with my child that helps them. Because the thing is some things you say to one kid, the child may laugh at it and it may change their whole demeanor, and they're good and they move, and you say the same thing to another kid and it crushes them. And so I think that is wonderful to just have that open line of communication. And you know, the prayer is that when we have these conversations with teachers, that we're not shut down as parents, and that there is that open dialogue. And I think if we talk about like a lack of communication, if we feel like teachers are not communicating with us, I think we can set up regular meetings. We can ask for an email or ask for a report, be the one to initiate that communication. So another thing, because I think you kind of touched on this a little bit, was having an unapproachable attitude. You know, sometimes parents may feel that teachers are not approachable. And maybe sometimes, you know, some people aren't as approachable because of their nonverbal communication. And so then we don't talk to those people because they don't seem approachable. So then what can we do about if the teacher seems unapproachable? Has anyone had that experience before? And what did you do? Okay, if someone does want to say something, if you want to interrupt me, I'm totally okay with that. But one solution would be encouraging and approach the situation, give the teacher the benefit of the doubt that they're doing their best. Because one thing that we have to realize about teachers is that sometimes they may be introverts, sometimes they may be very reserved, just like we are. Sometimes teachers can get in front of a group of kids and teach all day, but then when they're with adults, sometimes they kind of clam up and maybe they're really, really shy. And so I think realizing that though they may appear unapproachable, they may be approachable. And so I think sometimes as parents, we may have to make that first move and talk to the teacher and initiate that. And then again, we have the asking of questions. Remember that your child and the teacher might have a different perspective about what happened, but then focus on what is common and be willing to problem solve. And let's say that teacher really does have an unapproachable attitude, then you really have to ask yourself, is it worth letting that go so that you can have a conversation and do what's best for your student? Because sometimes, let's be real. Sometimes, like one of the parents talked about that the teacher was shutting them down, and the teacher didn't really want to hear what they had to say. Is it worth it to get upset about that and not talk to the teacher and not get your students' needs met? Sometimes we have to let that go. And when the teacher's finished, say, well, how can we partner? Because at the end of the day, we really want to get down to the bottom of what's best for our kid. I see we have a hand raised.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember too that our children are different than us, because I had an experience when my daughter was younger and I did not like her teacher. I did not like her. She loved her, but also my daughter and I have different personalities and different likes, wishes, wants, and desires. And so I had to also step back, like, because you asked, like, is it better to, you know what I'm saying, like, step back and not deal with it. So I had to, like, really reel it in, like, if she's okay, I'm okay. If she's not okay, I'm going ham, you know what I mean? And so I think that that is just I don't know if that's a unique experience that other people haven't had, but I mean, everybody's an individual and one size doesn't fit all. And so, yeah.
Yeah, and it's trying to figure out how do you get past that? Because if we are really, and I like to be pretty real about things. I mean, if we're real, we don't like everybody. Not everyone meshes together, but we can definitely figure out what do we have in common about that person. And so I did a study once, like how to deal with people that you don't agree with. And it really talked about, there has to be something about that person that you either like or appreciate. So find what that is and focus on that rather than the things that you don't like about them. Because everyone has good qualities. So try to figure out what those are. And then when you interact with that person, think about those positive things. Or maybe ask your child, well, what do you like about your teacher? And focus on that part. We have another hand up.
Hi, how are you guys doing today? I'm Jada. So I feel like my question is like my daughter's teacher, she'll come back and tell me that he gets like overstimulated or like really irritated. And sometimes he slips up and he uses profanity. And mind you, she's only in third grade. So I feel like I can't approach him sometimes because even with like me going to the principal and letting her know like my concerns, it's more of like now we're in parent teacher conference and he's very short and he doesn't like give me any resources. So I feel like my daughter needs speech therapy. And he's like, nope, as long as she keeps reading at home, she's fine. I don't think she's on the border of an IEP or whatever. But my daughter is 8 and I do feel like she can express herself a little better as far as like she'll stutter a lot, and trying to explain that to him, or like while I'm explaining it, like he'll cut me off, and I've brought it to the principal's attention, and I feel like I've talked to her. She said she was gonna talk to him about it. She said sometimes she feels the same way, but it never got back to me. So how do I kind of like follow up with that? See if I can approach him about that now. Like, how would I even approach to say like I get scared that like he's gonna start treating her wrong if I'm like, oh, my daughter, like Nyla comes back and kind of says like sometimes you slip up, we're all human, but what are some other steps like you could take like to not like these are elementary kids. So I never excuse like an adult like slipping up like around the children using profanity. So and then it's like, how do I know if it's really happening in the classroom? So I think that's my question.
Okay, so I want to make sure that I'm clear. So you're saying the teacher is using profanity?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And your daughter is telling you that. So how do you handle? So has your daughter told you that this is still happening even after it's been
Um,
addressed? Is that what you're saying?
yeah, so I feel like she hasn't been coming home telling me as much, but she still will come home like Mr. Baker got really upset today or whatever. Like, and I'm just like, okay, I'll talk to the principal again, or I'll send a we have class dojo, so like I'll send a dojo to her principal and just let her know it kind of happened again, and it's never like a feedback thing. It's like, okay, I'll talk to him or I'll handle it. Or, I've gotten complaints from other children and it'll be like not about profanity, but how short he is or how irate he kind of gets with the kids.
So I think, and this is probably going to sound so opposite from what you may want to hear, but sometimes when teachers are short or their profanity is maybe a new one for elementary school, but there's usually something happening. There's a reason that they're frustrated, that they are overstimulated, that, and I'm talking about the teacher, that they might get short. I still think an encouraging note, find out what he's doing well and send that. You would be surprised that a teacher that is frustrated, stressed, or whatever reason, whatever is going on that is causing that behavior, how a kind word can help de-escalate that. That could help de-escalate it quicker than talking to the principal or anything else. If the teacher knows that the parents are behind me and they are supportive of me, they know that I'm maybe a little bit stressed and they want to brighten my day, sometimes that can help a teacher turn that around.
Okay. I mean, I could try. I feel like I don't get into like Mama Bear mode because she's never saying this directly towards her, but I just feel like her hearing it. And then, this is her first male teacher since she's been going to school. And I just don't want her to feel like, is that normal? Is that okay? If he's cursing, can I curse like to my friends when they're irritating me? So I think that's more of my concern. And I think I do a pretty good job. Like I'll drop them off and sometimes I'll even walk her to school and I'll have a short conversation, but he's always like very short. So with my son's teacher, we'll sit there, we'll conversate for 5 minutes if he's not busy or whatever. And he'll even let me know what my son has done, and that day or yesterday or in that week to make me feel like okay, like I like he likes it here, you guys are communicating, you're paying attention to him. Like more of him is just like everybody get in, sit down, hi, how you doing, all right, bye. So I'm just like, okay. It's very short.
Yeah, I think sometimes just giving that extra piece of kindness, and we may not feel that that is what that person deserves based on how they're treating us, but you never know, that can go a long way. It definitely can change people's actions when we show them a little extra kindness. And I think we really want to make sure, you know, that your daughter knows that, you know, if you're frustrated with someone, this is how you handle it. Your teacher may handle it this way, but this is how we handle it. If you are frustrated, and just say, you know, how about we write a picture for your teacher? Maybe he's upset about something. Maybe he's having a hard time. Let's draw a picture and draw him a thank you note and give it to him. And you never know how that could change the dynamics.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, there is one other comment about profanity being used by a teacher never being acceptable, but I like how the conversation, both sides, what's happening at home and then what's the dialogue looking like with the school, that it's multifaceted. So thanks for bringing some of those extra elements in.
Okay, so another one might be inconsistent feedback. I think we've kind of talked about this. You may feel that you're getting inconsistent feedback on how your kids are doing. I don't know how many, a lot of schools are using like Infinite Campus and Power School and different things like that, and you can look and see how your kids are doing. So I think that's a good way to keep up with how your kids are doing if you have that, and maybe ask the teacher to sit down and help you navigate it, because looking at Infinite Campus and those different sites can be confusing on the parent side of it. And I think also don't be afraid to be the first to ask a question or raise a concern. If you feel like you're not getting enough feedback from the teacher, be the one to ask that question. Well, how are they doing with this? How does this look? How are they doing in reading? Just, you know, a lot of times we think no news is good news. And then sometimes we get the report card and the report card is not so good news, but we haven't heard anything. So just, you know, don't be afraid to be the first one to ask the question and inquire on how your kids are doing. And then the next one is limited individual attention, or if your child says that they're not being treated fairly, I would say visit the child's classroom, see what the dynamics are before assuming that that they are being treated unfairly. Ask the teacher how often your child needs assistance, and then that'll let you know how often the teacher is coming to your child to help them. You can request that the teacher do extra check-ins with your student. And, you know, sometimes students are nervous about about asking for help. So when you talk to the teacher, you may find out that the student really isn't asking questions in class. And what I typically suggest that teachers do in that situation is, if you find out that a student is too nervous to ask for help, then just go to that student, see what they need help with, and just help them. Or go to that student and ask them, do you need help? And so sometimes partnering with the teacher, say, hey, well, my child is a little nervous about asking for help. So could you just go up to them and ask them if they need help? Because then they will say, oh, yes, can you help me with? So I think those are ways to partner with teachers on making sure that your kids are getting enough attention in the classroom and that they feel that they are treated fairly. Any comments on that or questions?
I do. Well, as an educator myself, what you just said, that's really helpful. Because, for instance, I was teaching high school. I'm teaching college right now, but before I was teaching high school, sometimes I had 200 students, and it's really hard to accommodate for everyone. But things like that, like my son is really shy, can you just go ask him if he had any questions? And even if they don't have an IEP, it's not just the kids that have an IEP or that have a 504, it's everyone. A kid can be shy, a kid can have different needs. So, those pieces of information, especially for high school students, are gold to me because that's how I become a better teacher. That's how I can reach your kid in a better way. So, especially at the beginning of the year, if you send me an email just letting me know this is what you can do for my child, um, he's really struggling with having to change from one high school to another. Can you help him in that way? Those are the pieces of information that we value the most. And that's how I can help your kid if you're giving me that information. Also like Infinite Campus, if parents are checking like Infinite Campus or Google Classroom, that is a way of engaging for us without you sending like an email. That is also helpful for us. If you're like checking your child's homework and then you're helping them at home and just reaching out and say, hey, I noticed that he's missing that homework. What can I do to help? That's a huge help because we love that and we love the communication. I know sometimes like high school teachers can be seen as they don't want us to communicate with them, but we do. Like we love that communication. And I'm speaking for my colleagues as well. We love when a parent communicates with us. And that's it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, I think that communication is important. And it can be just teachers get just as nervous with communication as parents do. So just keep that in mind. They're nervous too. So yeah.
Yeah, and also one more thing. I had this thing like parents will email me like Saturday night and then they say, "Oh, you don't want to communicate because I wrote you like 3 days ago and you haven't answered." No, it's my weekend. We have a life as well. We like to go home and spend time with our families. I'm going to reply to your email Monday morning when I'm working, not Saturday at night. That's also to something to keep on mind on the side of an educator. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for saying that is important. I have really I would tell my teachers, protect your weekend, protect your time, answer it on Monday. I have told my teachers that because they do need to have that weekend and have that time. So definitely considering when you sent the email. Like if you sent it at the end of the day, they probably won't get it to until the next morning. A lot of times some teachers are able to check email during the day. Some teachers are teaching what we call bell to bell, wall to wall. So I think having that in mind too, and then following up because sometimes emails get lost. So definitely following up and just say, hey, were you able to get my email on whatever day? I think could be helpful as well. Okay. So sometimes homework overload can be a concern. Definitely you want to let teachers know if it's taking your student a very long time to do their homework. I will tell you when my youngest was in probably about second, third grade. Oh my goodness. Homework that I knew should only take about 30 minutes took us an hour and a half because he was doing the most. And so I needed to put some strategies in place. So maybe talk to the teacher about what strategies you can put in place. I had to just to bribe mine with M&Ms. Like, okay, if you finish your math facts should take a minute because I'll set a timer and you finish it. Okay, if you finish it in a minute, you get one M&M. Or it could be TV time or more free time or whatever. There may need to be strategies put in place, but teachers can help with that if there's too much homework. Sometimes they may have some tips that they can give you on that. So it's always good to make sure that we're talking to them about that. There may be reasons why it takes our kids a little longer to do their homework. Any thoughts on homework or questions about that? Okay. All right. Classroom management. We may have as parents concerns about classroom discipline. We've talked a little bit about that, a lot about that, about different behaviors of different students and how the teachers are handling behavior in the classroom. And one solution for that would be to definitely meet with the teacher or maybe visit the classroom to see how they handle behavior. Set up a meeting and ask the teacher how they handle certain behaviors and talk with them about maybe some strategies they can use with your child, what motivates your child best to put their best foot forward, or what might be the reasons why they have certain behaviors, and what interventions can be put in place to help them with that. Like we would have students that would maybe be a little fidgety, and some kids have a they have challenges with sitting still for a long amount of time. So we may talk to the teacher about that. The teacher might send them on an errand, like let them give other students dots, or we may tell them, hey, can you go sharpen this pencil for me? The pencil may not really need to be sharpened, but I know you need to move right now. And so just talking to the teacher about different things that they can do to put in place to prevent behaviors rather than having to address them all the time. And so we can definitely have a partnership with that. Any questions on any of those things or suggestions, things that have worked?
Nothing in the chat right now. So.
Okay. All right. So that is pretty much all I have as far as parent engagement. You guys have definitely been wonderful. I love all of the questions, all of the suggestions, all of the sharing of your experiences. It really takes all of us to be able to do this thing. It's really, they compare teaching to rocket science. Parenting is rocket science as well. And so it's just wonderful to have a group of people where we can share and really learn from each other. So I will open it up for any last questions, and then I will turn it back over.